Support for this show comes from Lead Quizzes. Lead Quizzes helps you easily set up high-converting quizzes to capture and qualify leads for your business. Visit leadquizzes.com/podcast to get a 14-day free trial today.
I was participating in one of my last fisheries. It was down in San Francisco, the herring fishery, and I had my boat out on the water, and I was dead broke. I just desperately needed to make some money there. And running my boat across the bay from Sausalito to Pier 45, and I get out by Alcatraz Island, and one of my engines blows up in twin engine. And I just, oh my God, how much worse can it get than this?
From Lead Quizzes, it's Journey to Seven Figures, a show about entrepreneurs and the stories behind how they grew their business to seven figures and beyond. We cover the good, the bad, and the ugly, and the lessons they learned along the way. I'm Jeremy Ellens, and this is episode number 4. On today's show, I interview Randy Hartnell of Vital Choice Wild Seafoods and Organics. Randy spent the first 17 years of his career as a fisherman of wild salmon in Alaska and California, operating 4 fishing vessels. But things weren't without challenges. Industry demand shifted, and Randy was forced to make a dramatic change one year when he couldn't meet payroll. He decided to start Vital Choice, shipping wild salmon by mail direct to consumers. Their first year in business, they hit 7 figures in revenue. An overnight success, just 17 years in the making. Fast forward to today, 20 years later, Vital Choice is a $20 million a year business. I can't wait to share their story with you. Let's jump in. All right, so I'm really excited to have Randy Hartnell on today from Vital Choice Wild Seafood and Organics. Thank you so much for joining us today, Randy.
Great to be here, Jeremy.
Awesome. So I've been a Vital Choice customer for a while. I've been buying your salmon and your products. Our employees have bought it. We bought it for customers. You guys have incredible seafood. So thank you for that. But yeah, we're really excited to talk to you today. So you started Vital Choice 17 years ago in 2001. You guys have built it to over $20 million in annual revenue. But before we jump into that and your journey to 7 figures with Vital Choice, I want to talk about your background and what made you successful, gave you the capabilities that you needed to be successful with Vital Choice. So let's jump in kind of behind the story of Vital Choice.
Okay, I think a couple of things that were critical to our success. One was I went to school and I got a degree in English literature. This was long before Vital Choice was planned, or during that period of time when I was going to school, I started going to Alaska to fish in the summers and turned out to really love that. I actually decided to go and continue fishing rather than going to grad school. Ultimately became a full-time fisherman, had my own boats and crews for over 20 years, as you mentioned. And that gave me a lot of insight into the industry, seafood quality, just a lot of knowledge, a lot of contacts, a lot of resources within the seafood industry. So I probably would still be doing that, except along about 2000, farm salmon came on the world scene and essentially displaced our markets, took over our markets. And we were still catching a lot of these wonderful wild salmon. They were abundant, but nobody wanted them anymore. Farm salmon was a lot cheaper. Nobody knew the difference. And so I had to figure out something else to do, some other way to make a living. So the old saying that necessity is the mother of invention was never more true. I was desperate to figure out what I could do to make a living. And that, over the course of a couple very painful years, evolved into what has now become Vital Choice.
Awesome. Yeah, so let's back into that. So you were doing commercial fishing in Alaska and California, I believe, which was very hard work. I also hear it's a pretty dangerous job as well.
It can be if you're careless, like anything.
Okay. Okay, so I think probably a lot of people have seen it, I think, as a discovery show where they do deep sea fishing. Was that the kind of thing that you were doing?
Well, Alaska can be extremely brutal depending on where you're at and when you're there and the nature of the crew. Mm-hmm. And I figured out pretty quickly after both myself and my brother almost died on boats up there in winter fisheries that we didn't want to be in Alaska during the winter. Fortunately, the salmon runs are in the spring and summer. The weather's a lot better. You don't have to worry about your boats icing up, 40-foot waves washing you overboard. So
okay.
That's what led to California fisheries. It was a much more safe and humane place to spend the winters than Alaska.
There you go. So that's smart. So you did this business, and then out of necessity, the industry started changing. There was less demand for the wild seafood that you guys were catching. And so what about that turned you towards like, you know what, I'm going to like open up vitalchoice.com and transition into that business?
Well, I had a good friend who really it's about having your radar game turned up and just looking for opportunities. You know, when you're desperate for something to do, you're really looking for opportunities. And I was fortunate that I happened to fall into a situation where I recognized that there was a demand for wild salmon. It was just hard to find those people.
Mm-hmm.
And for those many years I was fishing, I was just catching the fish and putting them on, handing them over to my buyer and letting him worry about all the marketing.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't really done any marketing myself, but I had a friend contact me one night when we were going through all this, and he said, I've been taking my fish out on the road to grocery stores and setting up my barbecue in front of the stores and cooking a fish and telling the story, and people love it. He said, you got to come with me. I've got a tiger by the tail. So I did go with him, and it was such a breath of fresh air to see that while a lot of people in the industry were calling us the last of the buffalo hunters, consumers actually, when they learned the difference between these two types of food, they really wanted what we had. They just didn't know how to get it. And that eventually evolved into me telling some of them that I would send them some of my salmon. And that ultimately led to the business model that we developed, which is really based on the Omaha Steaks model, if you're familiar with them.
Okay.
So they're sending basically steaks through the mail to people and had been doing it for many years. And I heard at the time they were doing tens of millions of dollars in business. I thought, well, we've got a product that, unlike red meat, you can't buy at any grocery store. It's completely natural, sustainable. It's just like one of the healthiest foods you can eat. And so I quickly got excited about that project. It took me a couple of years to get it off the ground, but when we did, we have never looked back.
Okay, so let's back into that a little bit. So you could talk about like the difference between wild seafood and farmed, but if you could give us like a couple sentences, like what makes it more beneficial to get like wild salmon?
I could talk for hours. I know we don't have time, but I'll just say the nutritional differences are significant. You have a 100% natural food, one of the last truly wild foods left on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
People have been eating for tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. From an environmental standpoint, you have wild salmon that is, especially from Alaska, that is probably one of the most sustainable foods on the planet. All we have to do is protect their habitat, and millions of fish come back every year. They grow themselves. They don't need any fertilizer or drugs or anything, really. You just have to protect their habitat. They're on virtually every environmental organization's superfood list or most green list. And then they also taste better because of what they're fed. The wild salmon are eating a natural diet like they always have, and they taste delicious. Farm salmon are fed a grain-based diet, just like chicken or pork or beef or any other protein out there. So they're really two totally different animals. They both are called salmon, but there's a dramatic difference between the two. And when people learn the difference, they definitely want the wild. They don't want the farm.
Okay, awesome. So you have a much better product. You understand that there's a difference. There is a need out there, but you need to like learn how to market and sell this. You're looking at a different business model. Was the fishing model, was that business kind of starting to collapse? And like, what was that like for you during that period?
That was about as painful as life gets. I had crewmen for many years, really great crewmen, and I always prided myself on being a good fisherman and paying my crew well. And we got to the end of, I think, the second year when the amount we were getting paid for all these fish we were catching wasn't enough to cover the bills. I couldn't afford to pay my crew, and that was just not obviously sustainable. So I hung it up and went a different direction. And I ultimately ended up paying off those crew members in Vital Choice shares, which worked out pretty well for them.
So how did you get through that? Because a lot of entrepreneurs, like when you're trying to get to seven figures, you're probably going to go through like a similar story as you. Like there's going to be pivots. You're going to do something different than what you originally set out to do. But how do you get through that? Like where instead of giving up, you decided, I'm just going to change and go into something else.
Like a lot of entrepreneurs, I think you have to have a vision because there's so many people all around you telling you it'll never fly Orville, right? It'll never work. Mm-hmm. There's all the different reasons that people are not going to buy fish through the mail, right? And really, I'm sure you heard this, Jeremy, that to be successful, an idea almost has to sound crazy because otherwise somebody else would have done it. And this is at a time when the internet bubble had just exploded, when just so many things stacked against us. But I had this vision. I had talked to people and I recognized that there was a demand. And so that's really what carried me through. I mean, it was a very low time. And most entrepreneurs, I think, have been through this where look at Elon Musk. I mean, how many times has he almost gone broke? But he's had this unwavering vision and commitment to seeing it through. And so I think that's the most important message I want to leave with people is even when things look down, just believe in it, keep going.
Yeah, keep going. And I think a lot of those times, like in business or in life, the challenges that you have in your business or life, like if you can get through them, like usually there's much bigger breakthroughs on the other side of those. So even though they're really painful in the moment,
that is so true.
They can be really great for us.
That is so true. Just putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Okay.
In business and in life.
Awesome. So you had this idea, this concept of like, I'm going to do the Omaha steaks, but with wild seafood. So what were the first few steps that you took to get Vital Choice off the ground?
Jeremy, there was just so much serendipity that happened. Things just kind of fell into place. And I kind of believe that when you're doing what you're supposed to do, that tends to happen. The right people came along at just the right time. Here's probably the best example. I was participating in one of my last fisheries. It was down in San Francisco, the herring fishery, and I had my boat out on the water, and I was dead broke. I just desperately needed to make some money there. And running my boat across the bay from Sausalito to Pier 45, and I get out by Alcatraz Island, and one of my engines blows up in twin engine. And I just, oh my God, how much worse can it get than this? And anyway, that led to me limping back into port, tearing into the engine. And in the course of the 3 days we're rebuilding the engine, I had this little AC/DC TV on, and I had it on Channel 9. And there was a fellow doing one of their publicity campaigns promoting his book, which was called The Wrinkle Cure. And it was a fellow named Dr. Nicholas Perricone. And initially I'm thinking, as I'm turning wrenches, I'm thinking, what the hell is PBS doing promoting a book called The Wrinkle Cure? But as I listened in the background, I heard him keep mentioning salmon. He was promoting salmon, and the Wrinkle Cure was a salmon diet. Obviously caught my attention, and that led to me writing this fellow a letter basically saying, you're crisscrossing the country promoting salmon, and especially wild salmon. People don't really know how to get it because farm salmon has displaced wild salmon everywhere. I'm starting this company. I've got this idea to start this company. Here's my background. I'm going to send wild salmon to anybody on a FedEx route in the United States, and I can make your advice truly actionable. And much like throwing a note in a bottle overboard, never really expecting to hear from him, I sent it off. And a couple of weeks later, his publicist called me and told me that he had got my letter and was very interested in working with us. That subsequently led to me going back to the East Coast to have a meeting with him telling me that he was going to put me in his next book and put our company in his next book. There was only one problem. We didn't have a company. And the book was about 6 months off. So we decided we had 6 months to build our website and get everything going. And, in retrospect, it looks almost magical that it happened the way it did, but it was full of so much uncertainty and doubt. Is he really going to put us in the book? Anyway, I pressed forward. He ultimately did keep his word. And so it was like guerrilla marketing 101. And then that led to me writing other letters. This is where the English degree came in, because I could write a fairly decent letter. And for 20 years, been a literate fisherman and didn't really use my degree that much. But I think that being able to write compelling letters, it was amazing, because I wrote to 3 different celebrity nutrition health experts, and all 3 of them responded. I ended up meeting all, becoming friends with all. They all ended up promoting us and have ever since in their books. And
let's talk through that then, because like the influencer model, like that is an interesting way to get out there. Whether people go and decide to partner with someone on Instagram or partner with someone that has a big email list or different following. So when you wrote to them, you told them about your vision, you told them about what you're doing and how you could help. Did you do any kind of was there a lot that was put into it? Like, hey, I want to send you this like salmon for free. I want you to try it. Like, how did you really get them hooked in? Or were they just like, yeah, this is way better than what I'm currently promoting. Like, let's just promote you instead.
I think, you hear these words thrown around a lot, authenticity. And I was not a marketer. I'd been a fisherman for most of my adult life. And if you would have asked me at the time, I would have thought that being a salesman or marketer was the last thing that I really wanted. As I would come to find out, the best salesmen are people who are passionate about their product, and have a good product and are passionate about it. And I was passionate about it. And I had the benefit of this deep experience in Alaska, which, it's a great brand and a story. And so all of those, I think, contributed to my letters resonating with people, basically just telling them that, look, I've got access to this really wonderful product that's better than what's commonly available, and I can get it to your community. And so it just over and over again, that message resonated with people that I was reaching out to. And of course, not everybody has that type of story, or that type of product, but I think you can apply that sort of that authenticity and whatever stories that the people have at their disposal.
Sure.
That's really what I think gets people's attention.
Okay. So I like that. So you found that this first influencer with the wrinkle cure, were able to help him. He started promoting you. That worked. So you decided, let me replicate this and find some other influencers. So with those 3 other influencers, you have, 3 or 4 influencers. Did they get you over 7 figures, or did they get you into the 6 figures, or how far did that take you?
They got us, I think we hit 7 figures in our first year.
Okay.
One other thing I want to mention is I have another friend locally that I didn't know him at the time, but a mutual friend introduced us. And he had started a company in his garage that he'd grown multi-million-dollar business. And she set up a lunch meeting with us and just thought it would be useful. And again, this is before we had started the company. And the one takeaway I got from that message was, he said, go to trade shows, figure out where the people you want to talk to are, and go there and let them come to you. And so right out of the gate, we started doing that. We found nutrition-oriented conferences and trade shows, and we'd put up a table and we would talk to people and tell them about what we were doing. And over the years, we figured out which shows were the most effective and which weren't. Mm-hmm. And we still to this day do that. And we met countless influencers in the course of doing that. And it's just guerrilla marketing 101. To the extent you could get people out there spreading the word at little or no cost, it subsidizes a lot of your marketing tuition. Mm. And so I attribute a lot of our success to that advice that fellow gave me that day.
Very cool. We'll get back to the show in a minute, but first a quick thanks to our sponsor, Lead Quizzes. If you want to grow your business to 7 figures and beyond, you must learn how to generate leads predictably. When I first started my business, lead generation felt like riding a roller coaster. I would have huge sales months and then months with nothing. This happened because I relied solely on referrals and networking to grow my business. Predicting growth and investing in the future were frightening because I didn't have control over my lead generation. That was before we created Lead Quizzes. Now I predictably generate leads in my sleep and have stopped worrying about where the next sale will come from. Top marketers like Neil Patel and Lewis House have used Lead Quizzes to increase their lead capture by up to 500%. Think about it. Quizzes are fun, engaging, and you can offer personalized feedback in exchange for your quiz taker's contact information. Lead Quizzes is a software that allows you to set up high-converting quizzes quickly without having to hire an expensive programmer. In fact, our users have generated over 3 million leads for their businesses. Take control of your lead generation today and start your 14-day free trial by going to leadquizzes.com/podcast. So with the trade shows, I see you guys at these trade shows all the time. How many trade shows do you guys do a year now?
We do about, 8 or 10, something like that.
Okay.
There are always more. And so we weigh the benefits versus the costs. The ones that we found are most effective are the ones where people already understand and appreciate the value of our products and our services. Mm-hmm. We don't have to educate them. We just have to let them know we exist. And that seems to give us the best ROI on that effort.
Okay. And so the first conference you went to, was it something where you found it paid back what you had invested to be there right away? Or is it something you guys just committed to stick to?
That's a good question, Jeremy. And really, because to this day, we wrestle with what kind of ROI are we getting on these? Well, the thing is, how do you put a value on some high-profile nutrition celebrity all of a sudden promoting you to his community, to putting you in his book, her book? It's those really intangible returns that we've just believed in. Mm-hmm. And we can sometimes we'll sell products at the shows, but really it almost never covers the cost of attending. So it's those relationships that we're building. And I think the first show we went to, or one of the first significant shows we went to, was a conference in Las Vegas called the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. And this was a bunch of anti-aging doctors. And so we pitched our wild salmon as the ultimate anti-aging food. And funny thing about it, there were hundreds and hundreds of vendors, big show, thousands of attendees. There was nobody else there pitching seafood or wild salmon. It's supplements and medical devices and lasers and, all that kind of thing. And so we've done that show almost every year for 12 or 14 years. And frequent visitors know we're there. They'll bring their friends over. Every year we meet lots of new people. And so that's sort of an example. That was has been effective.
Okay. So you guys got into like 7 figures with some of these influencers like pretty quickly. What took you from like 7 figures to then getting into 8 figures and 20 million? Was it continuing to just add more and more influencers, or did you start adding different marketing channels to drive more sales?
One other thing that's probably worth mentioning, Jeremy, is obviously wild salmon is a relatively expensive product. Mm-hmm. So average order values are typically pretty high. And, we've been remarkably consistent. We're always shooting for how to take it to the next level. And we've had countless people approach us over the years. We know how to take you to the next level. It's become like a bad joke. And the products are different, whether you have digital products you're marketing, or what we've done is just pitch this as really good food that's good for your health and you should be consuming it regularly. So we have a lot of very loyal customers that order from us many times. And I think having a consumable product that people need to keep purchasing is conducive to steady growth. We were surprised to learn that most specialty food companies sell most during the holidays, whereas our product was something people are consuming around. So I think that was another advantage that helped us grow. So our growth curve has been just pretty steady. I remember one year we got invited to be Dr. Oz, and we gave everybody in the audience a package of frozen salmon samples. I think we ended up spending about, I don't know, I'm probably not supposed to say they had to sign a contract. But anyway, we did that and we thought, oh my gosh, this is going to take us to the next level. Dr. Oz has got all these viewers, and this is back before he had a little bit of bad PR when he was the place to be. And, it wasn't a big spike. And part of that, I think, is, again, the cost. It's a fairly high cost to purchase our products. And I think we still have customers that we got, from that show. So you really got to be willing to look at the sort of long tail when you make investments in marketing.
Yeah. So I think there's a couple good points there. I think with your influencers, I'm guessing that you find the best influencers come where they have some kind of program or system where your product is built into it. So it's more natural that it's going to be picked up and that people are going to stick with it versus just an influencer just saying like, hey, this salmon's great. You guys should try it. Is that a good assumption or no?
Really, it's the customer has to have a good experience and then they come back. And we've really put a lot of energy into the customer experience.
Okay.
And so number one, we start with just sourcing the very best product that we can get. And I'm able to do that because of my deep insight into the business and knowing that wild salmon from one part of the state is different and superior to wild salmon from a different part of the state. And just a lot of different business models out there. But ours has been differentiate ourselves by providing quality that just isn't available at Costco and Trader Joe's and Safeway and Kroger's. And so that's what we've done. And we've priced our products accordingly. We pay what we have to get, put a margin on it, and the price is what it is. And if people don't want it or can't afford it, it's unfortunate, but the customer has to be satisfied. And we put a lot of resources into customer service. So we've got a dedicated customer service team to make sure that any concerns are addressed. We have many customers that have ordered from us over 100 times. We even have one customer who I think is over 900 times. She's been with us a long time and she just likes our products and tells everybody, it's the sort of holy grail of customers that we're all shooting for. Just sing praises.
Yeah.
The chance they get.
So I think that's a really good point. A part of sales, it's really easy to think about what's the marketing channel that you're going after, but it is actually, I think, 3 to 4 times cheaper to market to an existing customer than it is to acquire a new customer. So I think a couple of really good things out of this, number one is you guys know your customer. You're not trying to serve everybody. You want to have this extremely high quality. It's going to cost more, but the customer that you guys want to acquire is going to be willing to pay for something like that. So I think that's a really good lesson for anybody starting their business is know your customer and don't try to make everybody happy. And as far as keeping people, is there anything more about the customer experience that you guys have really focused on, or has it largely just been like the highest quality like product that you guys can provide?
No, if you go to our website, about 3 years ago, I think we brought the customer feedback tool widget that we have on our homepage. But every time we send out a product to a customer, send out an order, they'll be followed up a couple of weeks later with a questionnaire survey, let us know what you thought. And in 3 years or whatever it's been, we've got over 8,000 reviews on our website. And you go through and read those, and it's such an incredibly valuable tool to see where you're falling short or to get positive feedback. Most of them are positive. And what we've done to drive that is just we're obsessive about great customer service. People call us, and no matter what their problem is, we do everything we can to take care of it. I got a call from a customer just a couple of days ago, and she said, "I want to speak to Randy." Well, this is Randy. She says, "Well, I want to tell you that," and she's just singing praises about Karen, one of our customer service people who's been with us from the beginning. And she is a saint. I want you to know you wouldn't have my business because you've dropped the ball a couple of times, but I love Karen, and she takes good care of me, and so I will continue being a customer. And that's music to our ears, and that's what we try to do. Nobody's perfect. A lot of the times the complaints are related to failure of the courier, not getting there on time, weather's bad, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to have failures. But as you said earlier, once you have a customer, it's a lot cheaper to keep them than to go out and find a new one. And so we really bend over backwards to keep our customers happy.
Okay, that's great. So you spend a lot of time like surveying and getting feedback from your customers so that you guys can improve your process. That's awesome. All right. So kind of transitioning, you built this business. If you had to pick one thing, like what would be the one thing that you think you did that had the biggest impact on your growth?
That's pretty easy, really. And that is I hired a fantastic partner who's really smart and accomplished and capable in all the areas that I fall short. And I just can't overstate the importance of hiring good people. And even when I was a fisherman, I would watch other fishermen around me, and they were always figuring out how they could get a crewman for the least amount of money. And then they ended up pulling their hair out through the season because he couldn't get fish out of the net fast enough, or he couldn't fix the net, or whatever. Whereas I was willing to pay over market to get people who could do all of that, let me focus on running my boat and finding the fish. I think with Vital Choice, it's been the same thing. I've just really been willing to pay for the very best people we could afford. And I think that's made all the difference.
Okay. Awesome. I think I have a partnership myself. Like that can be a tricky thing to get into. Are there a couple of things about selecting a partner that you would recommend would be useful for someone?
I think this goes back to my earlier comment that the serendipity, this fellow came along. He was recommended by a mutual friend that knew us both very well and thought we would be good for each other. And you hear so many nightmare stories about partnerships gone bad. We honestly have not had a fight in 16 years. I mean, we disagree, definitely. There are spirited debates, but we know that we both bring a valuable perspective to the conversation. So I think one thing you want to do is, don't surround yourself with people that think like you do. Find people that, like I said, can fill in the gaps. And, I don't have any magic formula for finding the best partners. Maybe other people out there do. But when you do, it's 1 + 1 = 3.
Yeah.
We've continued to do that all along the way. And I guess the other thing I would say is the hardest things of running a bigger business. Now we've got 30-some employees. And one of the most difficult things is letting people go when they're not working out, when they're not. I think you're familiar with the book Essentialism. If you were going to ask me my favorite business book to recommend, it would be Essentialism. Greg McKeown, I think.
Okay, how come?
And a lot of books address this. Jim Collins talks about it, getting the right people on the bus and the right seats and all that. But he talks about the difference between having A players and B players. And B players can be great. They can do the job and they can be hard to let go. But an A player can be 1,000 times more valuable to your company. And so I think that's a critical thing to keep in mind is sometimes you try to give people an opportunity to succeed. You support them, train them, whatever. But sometimes a job just changes and they don't have the skill set or whatever to satisfy the job, and you just have to move on. And so I think some of the hardest, most painful decisions that I've had to make the CEO of the company have been related to letting people go. But in every case, when the new people have come in, orders of magnitude improvement.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing. And I think one of the things you brought up was like around letting you focus on the things you're best at. Like Dan Sullivan talks about that as like your unique ability.
Exactly.
And I think that's a great point. Like I remember when we were starting our agency, kind of a similar example. I was selling it and then I was also managing clients. And like, so honestly, like I didn't have enough time to focus on one and just become really good at it. And when we actually did bring in someone much better at managing the clients, the sales went up more than like the 1+1 thing, and the client like experience went way up more than just a 1+1 thing. So I think, like you said, being able to focus on your unique ability, getting really good people in, that's like really, really good advice. Even though it sounds simple, it can have a huge impact.
Dan talks about, hitting the complexity ceiling where your business has grown and you get to that point where you just have a hard time breaking through. And we definitely hit that point. And I was watching a talk by a fellow who has studied a lot of companies. And he was saying basically the same thing, that they see that companies hitting sort of that ceiling. And really what it takes to break through it is bringing in new talent, new skills. And one of the things that really applied to us, we just needed more skills and capabilities than we had. We just were not going any further. And you've got to be willing to pay for them, because the best people are obviously going to cost more, just like the best fish.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to be willing to step up and pay for them if you can. And so that's what we've done, and it's always paid off.
Okay, that's great advice. Well, Randy, as we're getting to like wrap up, if you could go back in time and start Vital Choice over, what would you tell yourself?
I remember maybe 2 to 3 years into starting a company, I finally got to the point where, okay, I think it's going to work. There were a lot of sleepless nights. What if people just quit coming to our website tomorrow? My God, what would I do? And there's not a whole lot I would change. We made some misfires on hiring along the way, and I wish I had known everything then that I know now, but there's no substitute for experience on that front. So I think we've covered some of the most valuable things. Just hire good people and stick to your mission and your values and remain authentic. There's so much inauthenticity out there. And well, I think you're a millennial, or you're pretty close to it. I keep hearing that millennials they scrutinize the hell out of a company. But once you convince them that you're for real, that you're authentic, you have integrity, that they're powerfully loyal. And so I would just authenticity, integrity, quality, great customer service. I think those are all the things that would help any business.
Awesome. Well, great advice. I think you shared some really great lessons today, Randy. Of course, people can go find you at vitalchoice.com. Is there anywhere else that you would say would be great for them to connect with you if they want to learn more?
I think that's the best place. You can email me, rhartnell@vitalchoice.com. And we also have a great newsletter, and we didn't touch on that, but I think that's been a very powerful contributor to our growth. We have an email newsletter that we started right away, and we've grown that list. And it's a way for us to communicate our values and marketing and all kinds of things. I think we've got over 1,000 original articles that we published, and that's available in our newsletter archive on the website.
Okay, very cool. Well, Randy, thanks for coming on the show today and sharing your amazing story with us.
My pleasure, Jeremy. I hope some of your listeners find it useful.
Awesome. Thanks. Thanks again for listening to our show this week. If you want to find out more about Randy Hartnell and the lessons he shared today, or read our show notes, visit leadquizzes.com/4. If you'd like to start generating more leads for your business and get a 14-day free trial to Lead Quizzes, go to leadquizzes.com/podcast. Please also subscribe to our show on Apple or however you get your podcasts. I'm Jeremy Ellens, and you've been listening to Journey to 7 Figures.